right, you're going to be the first.
Hi, everybody, and just wanted to welcome you today to our presentation about a birth mother and birth daughter adopted parents' perspective on communication. We're so glad you could join us today. We are very, very thankful for you. We just want to focus on the importance of communication within the adoption triad and how that can impact so many things within the adoption triad. So I'll turn it over to Linda to allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Linda, and I am Kelly's birth mother. You may see a little bit of resemblance between the two of us. And Kelly indeed is my birth daughter. I'll let her continue. Oh, first, I'm also not only Kelly's birth mother, but I am a certified speech and language pathologist. I've been working in the public schools for over 38 years. And I have authored 2 books. One is a therapy manual called My Talking Portfolio, and I recently published, self-published Way Beyond, which is about our journey, Kelly and me together.
Yep. And I'm Kelly, and I am a couple of different parts of the triad. I am an adoptee. I'm also an adoptive mom to a parent of a teenager he's currently 17, and cross-racial adoption that we adopted when he was very little. He was 3 weeks old when he came home to us. And then outside of my adoption identity, I am also a special education teacher. I've worked in this public school system, teaching a variety of disabilities for kids for over 20 years. And I also am the executive director of Cedarbrook Camp Mid-Atlantic, which is my summer gig, which really takes more than just the summer, but it's a blast, and it's one of my favorite things that I get to do, and talking and working with a lot of different kids. So we're going to just go over our objectives for today real quick. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, so I will cover the first objective, which is identifying techniques for fostering safe and supportive communication environments for individuals coping with hidden grief, because that's kind of my part of the story. And then Kelly will, after I'm finished, Kelly will continue with objective 2, identifying strategies for communicating openly with young adoptees to promote acceptance of their adoption story, as well as support self-esteem. And then together, we'll talk about how open and honest communication after reunion contributes to the healing process for both the birth parent and the adoptee. So a little bit about my story. Kind of labeled this birth mother with no voice, because as I reflect back on after giving birth to Kelly when I was 15 years old, that for the first really 28 years after that, there was very, very limited communication. And I think that had really a negative impact on a lot of things. So when I was 15, I basically hid that I was pregnant. I didn't share it with anyone except for a brief conversation with Kelly's birth father. So I learned really to keep things to myself and not talk to anyone about it until I was just past 6 months pregnant, and my mother confronted me with the first communications that I really had, knowing her bringing up the question of whether I was pregnant. And after that, we devised a ruse to, again, kind of squelch the communication and keep the secrecy going. So my parents and my immediate family, as well as 3 of my closest friends, developed a ruse so that no one would know in the outside community that that I was pregnant. And that was actually successful. So I learned that, like, not communicating with people about it and having that secrecy was kind of the ticket to success for me, because I was able to get back into my high school life after giving birth to Kelly, and no one really knew or suspected, at least not overtly, that that I had left school for a couple months for any reason other than the ruse of taking care of my grandmother. So I learned that kind of that silence was necessary, and it was the key to working through difficult situations, to just kind of keep it to yourself and keep it bottled up and not to have open communication about it. And that really permeated me for the next 28 years after Kelly's birth. During those 28 years, I think I had about 6 conversations with about 5 different people. And that was it. Other than that, there was really no communication and no voice. So if we go to the next slide, that I strongly feel that communication instead of silence is an important strategy. And even though my family really dealt with the silence and the secrecy as a way of protecting me, nurturing me, it really wasn't healthy for me. And it was very, very isolating. So I think there are a lot of strategies that I have come across since that time, that strategies for really combating isolation. So important to create safe spaces for safe communication. There are organizations like Concern United Birth Parents. There are a lot of counseling opportunities, ways to get together with friends and just have safe communication. And I think that was really lacking for me. And encourage those support groups, like I had mentioned about Concern United Birth Parents and other support groups that are out there. Really grief support groups, because it is grieving to lose a child, even though it is to adoption. I did a good bit of journaling, and I think that's a very, very important part of the communication, even though it's just written communication, that's a healthy outlet in a way to encourage that communication. And I still feel that people asking open questions and responding with neutrality is so important. The one conversation I had with my sister, one of those 6 conversations, she just said, "Do you ever think about your birth daughter?" And that just opened up kind of a flood of communication, at least on one occasion, between the 2 of us. And again, just asking open questions and having that open communication without any judgment attached. So now Kelly's experience as a young adoptee, the first years of her life, was completely different from mine. So I'll let Kelly share her story.
Yes. So I have always valued the fact that I am adopted, and that was a very special part of my identity. And I think a lot of that was because of the way it was always communicated with me. I don't remember a time that I didn't know that I was adopted. Looking back, I couldn't remember a single moment where I had like a revelation, or it just became real to me. I always had known that. My parents, when I was very little, read the book referenced there, The Chosen Baby, which is a very sweet story, not the most realistic story, but it's about a mom and a dad going to a hospital and looking at the babies that are up for adoption and then pointing and saying, "I want that one." And they have another sibling with them, and that baby, that child participates in selecting the baby. And then that child is referred to as the chosen baby. And so my parents read that book to me many, many times, and would always at the end remind me and just say, "Kelly, you're just like the chosen baby. We got to choose you. We wanted you so badly that we got to choose you." And even though they didn't really choose me, it just really helped my identity to know that I was not abandoned by anybody. Many adoptees I know have abandonment issues, and I validate those. I understand those. But for me, that was never part of my adoption journey, because it was phrased to me so positively by my parents. I was allowed to ask questions at any time of whatever I wanted to know. They never said, "Oh, we don't talk about that." There was always open conversation and open communication regarding it. there was a conversation. I went to a Catholic school growing up. And when I was in about second grade, we were reading a passage in the Bible where it talks about how, we are God's chosen children, chosen through adoption. And, little me, Kelly, raised my hand. And I said, sister, sister, sister. I won't tell you the sister's name, but sister, guess what? What is it, Kelly? I'm adopted twice. Isn't that so cool? I'm adopted twice. And she responded, thank you, Kelly. Now please sit down. Which was probably not the best response at the time, but we didn't want to disrupt the class. But that's how I viewed my adoption, as it was a very special and unique thing about me that I cherished. As I grew up, I always wanted to know more. I always knew that I wanted to get answers to where I came from and who I was and my genealogy and things like that, and what the story was. I always knew as well that Linda was very young, that she was 15 when I was born. And so there was also a large part of me growing up that just wanted her to hear, thank you, that you made a really great choice in making an adoption plan, because 15-year-olds are babies and don't need to be raising babies. They should be being 15-year-olds. And so I wanted to make sure that she knew that she made an amazing choice and that I had an amazing family my whole life. So for me, having that open communication about adoption was very helpful. When I did come to my parents when I was about probably 12 for the first time and said to them, I want to find my birth mom, they said, that's wonderful. And there will be time for that. But right now is not that time. They really thought I needed to just figure out kind of who I was for myself. And I think that was a very wise decision. At the time, I did not like it. Same thing happened again when I was 16, and I sat them down and I said, okay, time is now. Now is the time to find my birth mom. And they said, well, we love you very much, and we do want that for you, but this is not the time in your life that we think this is the right decision for you to open that and to go there. And so I now, in hindsight, being a mom, I can look back and I understand that. I understand where they were coming from. And even though they were saying no, they certainly were still open with getting me as many answers as they possibly could. We did go to some support groups and reached out to some adoption triad groups to talk about that. My parents always, one of my dad's favorite things was he had a list of all the people, not all the people, but a bunch of famous people who were adopted. And he used to always bring that to me and say, can you believe it? You're just like all these cool people. All these people were adopted, even going back as far in the Bible as Moses. He was adopted too. And so for me, again, that just made adoption special because it was open communication about the whole process. So for me, that was really important. And so I think some of the strategies for embracing adoption is that early open communication. And with my own child, from a very young age, I wanted that to be true. I wanted my son to know that he was adopted. I didn't want there to be any question about it. He is cross-racial. He is a different race than I am. So from my perspective, it would be kind of obvious that he was adopted. So we also included books about cross-racial adoption. One of my favorite books was a book called Horace, and it's a book about a bunch of cheetahs, and they adopt a tiger. And then Horace decides he doesn't like his stripes. He wants to be spotted like a cheetah. So he runs away, finds a tiger family, and then he realizes these people aren't the same. They don't love me like my cheetah parents do. And the cheetah parents come and find him at the county fair, pick him up and scoop him up. And then his mom tells him this story about how he was adopted and how wonderful it is. And so we read that book a lot to our son, which I thought was a very good, non-judgmental way of showing cross-racial adoption. And it doesn't matter what you look like. A family is a family because it's built from love, and it's built around shared experiences and growing together. I was, again, as I said, I was always allowed to discuss things and ask questions, and those age-appropriate boundaries of within certain times. My son has met his birth mom once. They emailed. We had a little bit of a different situation. It was a closed adoption, but there's a third-party email system email system that they can use to communicate back and forth. And so about 4 years ago, when he was about 13, we received a message from his birth mom, and we emailed back. And many people discouraged me from telling him that we had heard from his birth mom. But from my perspective as an adoptee, I said, if I were in that situation and I knew my parents had communication with my birth mom and didn't tell me, I would have been so angry and so upset with them. And so I felt I need to communicate this with Nick. I need to let him know that his birth mom has reached out, and then have the conversation with him as, do you want to have communication with her? You don't have to. This is up to you. You can take some time. I can reply and say thank you for the message. Nicholas is processing this. There's a variety of ways to handle that. He decided he did want to have some communication, so he did email back eventually. And he is emailed sporadically. He met her once via Zoom, and his response after that was, Mom, there are some relationships that just kind of have to move slow, and I think this is one that I just need to move a little slowly with. And I thought that was very wise. And again, that open communication and being able to share that communication with his birth mother as well, and say, he does want to have a connection with you, but at this point in time, he needs to take it slow because of where he is in his own life, and not trying to rush him into having that relationship, because clearly he's saying, I'm not ready for that relationship right now. So again, that the age appropriate boundaries, encouraging that discussion, the open communication, not being afraid to talk about the tough topics. Sometimes talking about some things within adoption are hard, and my son's adoption story is a lot harder and more difficult than mine, through who his birth mother was. And so it's difficult, but sharing when he was old enough to kind of understand his own adoption story and why adoption plan was made for him, which again was very different than why Linda had made an adoption plan for me. But being sensitive to that, but not ignoring it and not answering those questions would not have been helpful. It was important to be able to answer those questions, again, at those age appropriate times, in bits and pieces, as I felt he was ready to hear them. He does know his full adoption story at this point, as he is 17. So, we again allow him to ask whatever questions he needs, which I think has really helped him accept a little bit more that he is adopted. He's had a little bit more of a struggle with the adoption concept than I did, due to some of his adoption story. But that is my story, and why I think open communication with especially young adoptees is an important thing, to tell them their story, because that is their story to know. So we're going to pause here for a minute and let you guys see if there's any questions that we can answer so far about what we've shared. We have lots more that we will get into after this Q&A time, but just wanted to take a moment and see if there was any questions that you had about our stories that we could answer briefly.
Yes, and then after the Q&A, we will get into our communication after we were reunited, and kind of the strategies that made that reunion successful, because again, that required very, what I call, sensitive and informed communication with again, those clear boundaries, so there's not any misunderstanding. Awesome. If there's no further questions, we'll move on to the next section. All right. Thank you. And we also have an interactive activity that we would like you all to participate in. So we will be doing that in a moment as well. Thank you so much for listening to us this first part. Great. Thank you.
Thanks.